would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, everybody. I should have done this show on Tuesday. It could have been a tinfoil hat Tuesday show. We're going to talk about some stuff. A couple of things are a little bit creepy. Then we're going to sort of segue happily into some of the best places to live in the country, according to U.S. News. This is the same list we covered about a year ago. There's two articles that I'm going to put in the show notes for this one. One is just the general ranking. We're going to rattle off the top 20. Then we're probably going to talk a little bit about just the top 5. You're going to see some interesting crossovers between this list and what we discussed yesterday. And remember, the more frequently you see these crossovers, where lots of different reasons to like a community, cities end up on those lists, on a variety of different lists, those should all be things to strengthen your confidence in potentially investing in those areas, right? But we'll jump into this because the second article by the same guys, by the U.S. News folks, actually takes that list and asks the question, are the best places to live the best markets to buy a home? So they cover that a little bit, and we might take a few excerpts from that article as well to chat this up a little. But I had a couple other little items I wanted to cover, which are really more in line with the tinfoil hat theme for today, that come to us from Zero Hedge. And it's another one of those situations where it's really just about looking at the data. We've had times in the past when we've covered stuff from Zero Hedge where we've debunked stuff a little bit in terms of what they were talking about in terms of having too many rentals and all these other sorts of things. But then when we actually calculated in population increase in these various areas, we were still way behind in where we needed to be. So this isn't so much that. This is really just a solid expression of some data that also dovetails in with other things we've talked about. And if you were playing phrase bingo, those of you who are betting on me using the word dovetails before we got 5 minutes into the show, you guys all win. I know I've had a couple of folks point out that they wait for that first time in a show when I'll use the phrase dovetails, but there it is. So there you go. You can all relax. The data here is just interesting in terms of stuff we've talked about before relating to debt. How much debt is there? How much debt is being accumulated? And then another piece of information that goes right along with that is an interesting change in the total U.S. bankruptcies year over year. And it's kind of interesting. I'm going to Pinterest the graphic that goes along with this because I think it's interesting to look at. I think it's a very interesting article to review. So make sure to take the time to click on the link that'll be in the show notes to take you to this article so that you can see the details for yourself. And if you come to a different conclusion, happy to hear about that. Or if you have other data, happy to hear about that too. Always excited when I can have sort of a give and take of data relating to some of these issues. Now, before we jump in and talk about this, let me remind everyone that we are coming up on yet another drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card. We're going to be doing that at 5 p.m. Pacific time today. I'm going to go ahead and draw folks from the current list, and those folks will win. Whoever gets drawn will win that $50 gift card. This will be the 5th time we've done this. We've given away $400 so far to 4 lucky winners. And if you would like to be in the drawing to win that $50 gift card, just head on over to therebelbroker.com. Click the red button at the top of the page that says take the survey to support the show. Use the same email address. Both times you're asked, answer a handful of questions, and you are in. And you're not only getting yourself in that drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card, you are also helping to support the show. So thank you to all of those folks who've already jumped in and done that. And good luck to those who are currently on the list who will be eligible for that drawing for that $50 gift card. Okay. we can also, what should I do? Should I tell everybody about the Rebel Underground? The Rebel Underground has enjoyed its first release of exclusive content as of last Saturday. I'd love to thank the folks who've given me some feedback on that. The way to join the Rebel Underground yourself is to text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. And I'm happy to get suggestions from folks that are in the Rebel Underground on other content they'd like covered using the video medium. I'm happy to do that. I've already got a few things in the queue that I'm going to work on that are all geared towards helping you analyze investments, be as prepared as possible before you make that first investment or make that first offer on an investment. So hopefully that'll all be stuff that helps you as well. In other news, this is more ground reality stuff. For those of you who've been listening for a long time, you know that I have been considering different options on how best to get into a new home, take advantage of the home equity I have in the property I'm currently living in, and leverage that into a property where I live in it. And then I also use part of the proceeds to purchase a investment property. For those of you who've been around for a long time, you'll know that my very first instinct was to go with a piece of land and have a home built on it, primarily because prices were at a point where it made, and it still makes, immense sense to buy a lot and build on it. Because when you're done, the property ends up being worth quite a bit more than what you paid out the door to get it completed. That's still the case here. That math all still works. I have continued to have my search running for lots to purchase, and a lot that would be perfect has come up. And unlike other lots, from what I'm hearing from the listing agent on this particular property, they are already accepting offers. It's only been on the market for 2 days. Lots almost never sell that quickly. I'm not sure if that's a strategy to try to get a little sense of urgency in there. So I'm working on putting something together to hopefully make that happen. If that happens, that would be awesome. It would allow me to, I would still move forward with my plans with the home I currently live in. I would simply fill in that time by renting somewhere else or whatever until the place is done. But this would be great. This would be a fantastic move for me. So the point, I guess the takeaway, I like to share what's actually going on. So the takeaway from this is when you have various plans and various strategies, I think it's good to keep the foundations of those strategies continuing to operate. So we've talked about a variety of strategies I've looked at. We've talked about the keep my current property, rent it, and buy another property. That was an option for me. I was approved for the financing to make that happen. It just would have meant not being able to use the capital from this home in the purchase of another home. Another option was the building of a home on a lot. And the third was to sell this home and then use the funds from that to build my holdings of investment properties. So right now, all of those are still potentially in play. And even though the lots that were coming on the market just weren't, none of the ones that were on the market were either in places where it didn't make sense to purchase them, where the lots were, not enough of the land was buildable due to it being vertical, or it was in the worst part of the flood zone where even in a rain like we're getting now, your property ends up getting flooded. Property that just came up outside of the flood zone. I drove by it this morning. It looks, despite the fact we've had rain for 3 days straight, no flooding at all. They're currently growing garlic on the lot. So absolutely would work out well. Nice and flat, totally buildable. So the point is, for you personally, obviously I'm sharing a specific that I'm going through, but my suggestion here is to keep your options open. Don't say, well, you know what, because for those of you who've been listening a long time, you know I've been looking for a lot. Is this year 2 where we've been looking for a lot? So just keep your options open. Don't abandon one because it doesn't work out in 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. If it's an option that you have already done the math on that makes sense and will work, understand that it may take a long time for an opportunity that will fit your criteria to come along. This lot would be perfect. I'm hoping I can make it happen in time. It's clearly been a long time since I talked to the folks where I had arranged the construction loan for this. Having to deal with them, trying to get that all pulled together. I'll give you an update when I find out more. But just a reminder to always keep your options open. Keep those things in place that will help you move forward with other options in case something comes up that makes another another path down your road of investment look more attractive. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about these numbers here. The article, again, as I mentioned, comes to us from Zero Hedge. I think this is one that is worth your time to read just for the data alone, and could clearly be a great conversation piece the next time you find yourself hanging out with someone who cares about this kind of stuff. The article starts off with, when debt grows much faster than GDP for an extended period of time, it is inevitable that a good portion of that debt will start to go bad at some point. That's important to mention because according to this article, which they accurately state, is we witnessed a perfect example of this in 2008, and now it's starting to happen again. What's interesting about these numbers is when you have consumer and commercial filings for bankruptcies plotted on a graph between December 15th and January 16th from January of 2016 to January of 2017, for the first time in 7 years, we are seeing those bankruptcies increase. Quote, U.S. bankruptcy filings by consumers rose 5.4% in January compared to January last year. According to the American Bankruptcy Institute, in December, they'd already risen 4.5% from a year earlier. This was the first time that consumer bankruptcies increased back to back since 2010. Now, why is this important? Because it fits in exactly with what we've been talking about for months in terms of other things that are concerning relating to the overall management of debt. We've covered tons of different elements of this topic, whether we're talking about student loans or we're talking about a gigantic auto loan bubble that's floating around out there, or the fact that folks really started jumping back onto the home equity line of credit train last year. And all of those things together are showing an increased amount of indebtedness. And then when you also mix that with the reality of folks seeing a increase of 0.02% in their income, but an increase in their indebtedness of 0.05, well, they're not making enough money to cover their newly acquired debt that they're accumulating. So those are bad trends. Now, it's important to also point out that consumer bankruptcies are still much lower than they were during the financial crisis. But what's interesting about this, and when you see numbers like this change, it could be a pivot point. When I'm looking at markets, that's what I'm looking for. I am looking for things that tell me this could indicate a shift in the marketplace that could affect an awful lot of things. If this trend continues, there's clearly at least a flattening. There's been a turn back up in terms of bankruptcies for January of 2017. That's a concern. Now, as I said, I will post this to Pinterest so you can see this graphic yourself. But given everything else we've talked about, this is a little bit worrisome. This is something that I think could absolutely be a moment we look back on and say this was one of the first things that gave us a hint that we were brushing up against a big debt-related problem. Now, what's more, we've also talked about policies that encourage folks to incur large chunks of debt. We've talked about how lending practices have again embraced subprime lending, where instead of this time simply saying we will lend to people with lower credit ratings, they've fooled with how credit ratings are calculated so that folks that would normally score much lower are scoring higher. They're doing the exact same thing they did before, but they're just doing it from the other end. So they're the solution to the problem. And I realize I keep harping on this, but I think this might be something where people slap themselves in a couple of years and go, why didn't we realize this? We're doing the exact same thing. We're facilitating an artificial increase in the prices of homes by pushing buyers into buying when the real solution to the problem is to increase inventory. Now, remember, last time we had a dramatic increase in inventory and dramatic increases in buyers. We just had a dramatic increase in buyers that totally outpaced the level of construction. So what we're seeing now is a big push to get more buyers, but without the commensurate increase in inventory to begin with. So the potential for this to go much more crazy before it drops, I think, is very real. Things are already a little bit tamer than last time. There was a lot more exuberance before. I have to think that there's a certain amount of concern for folks who remember what happened last time that's holding back things a little bit. But we're still seeing that trend. We're seeing properties continuing now to tend to go for crazy high-end prices. And remember with the percentages we've talked about. Some of my local markets, 5.6%, 7.4%. All of these numbers that are just increasing year in and year out. Now, the article goes on to say, quote, the dizzying borrowing by consumers and businesses that the Fed, with its ultra-low interest rates and its infinite wisdom, has purposefully encouraged to fuel economic growth, if any, and to inflate asset prices. That's what we just said, right? Because they've increased all of this buying ability, they've increased the price of the asset, the price to acquire it, has caused debt to pile up. The debt is now, and of course, they're talking about it in more general terms. They're not just talking about subprime lending. They're also talking about all these other things, whether it's cars or whatever else. That debt is now eating up cash flows needed for other things, and this is causing pressures just when interest rates have begun to rise, which will make refinancing this debt more expensive and for a rising number of consumers and businesses impossible. And so the legacy of this binge will haunt the economy and creditors for years to come. So let's sort of translate that, because it's also important to recognize the business end of it. Now, you might say, well, you know what, Robert, what do we care about the bankruptcies of commercial filings? Well, those are the folks who employ people. So when a company declares bankruptcy, the folks who used to work for them don't work for them anymore. So that's something I think we need to be concerned about in terms of its overall effect on the economy. Bad things happening in relating to bankruptcies and commercial filings is bad things that end up being reflected in the consumer numbers. Despite all the economic optimism that is out there right now, the truth is that the U.S. consumers are tapped out. If the U.S. economy truly was doing great, major retailers would not be closing hundreds of stores. Sears, Macy's, and a whole host of other big retailers are closing stores because those stores are losing money. It truly is a retail apocalypse. And this trend is not going to turn around until U.S. consumers start becoming healthier financially. The other side of this is that we're starting to see problems in auto sales numbers. Compared to 2016, sales are way down in January of this year. If you're comparing the numbers to January of last year, January for GM was down 21%, Ford down 17%, Fiat Chrysler down 35%, Toyota down 19.9%, Honda down 10.7%, Nissan down 9.0%. For all automakers combined, car sales sagged 12.2% from last year. Now, about 2/3 of the nation is essentially living paycheck to paycheck. All it would take is something to nudge those folks into negative territory on anything, and their biggest investment would be their home. And we could potentially see a repeat of what we saw last time, because that's really what triggered everything. When folks suddenly saw that they owed more than something was worth, they started trying to find an exit. How do we get out of this? So I'm going to go ahead and put a link into this particular article. It's going to be interesting to see how all this stuff plays out in 2017. If any of this comes to a head, the commercial stuff is concerning, as is the consumer stuff. The fact that it's made sort of a change here, a pivot, could indicate a trend. And if it does, that would be a bad thing. Now, the other little piece of data that I wanted to cover, again, also from Zero Hedge, headline: over 2.5 trillion U.S. student and auto loans hit new all-time high. And I'll go ahead and share the charts with you. The revolving consumer credit numbers are kind of staggering, particularly when you plot them out over a chart. Why? Because the last time we were at this level of revolving consumer credit was literally just before the downturn in 2008. If you look at the chart, which again will be up on Pinterest, or if you want to check the link to this article, it's a little bit concerning, because we are literally right where we were in 2007, with the trend in this chart looking like it's heading right to where we were in 2008. So I get a little concerned when I start seeing several different things falling into alignment with things that we were seeing just before the downturn last time. It may or may not concern you. I would encourage you to take a look at this. If you have a different perspective on this, I'd be happy to hear it. If you want to throw some numbers my way, I'd love to review those. So feel free to head on over to the website at therebelbroker.com. Check out the show notes for today's show so that you can get access to these. Then all of these charts are amazing. I'm going to go ahead and put them up on my Pinterest page as well, but they are kind of mind-blowing. So feel free to check those out. Now, we're going to take a quick break here for a moment, but when we do, we're going to go ahead and rattle off the top 20 best places to live in the United States. And then maybe if we've got time, we'll take a quick look at the top 1 or 2 communities. And you know what? We may have already done it. Who knows? Those may have been communities that we talked about yesterday that were on our top list. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We were sharing some of the nightmare fuel before the break relating to debt, how much of it there is, how similar the debt profile on revolving credit mimics what we were seeing prior to the last downturn in 2008. In fact, we're right about where we were in late 2006 up to mid 2007 in terms of debt. If you go and you look at that chart that I was referring to before the break, I've included a link to the article that includes that chart. I've also posted those images to my Pinterest page. If you want to just go check out the Pinterest page, you can go to therebelbroker.com. Over on the right is a palette of different icons. Click on the Pinterest icon and it'll take you right to it, so you can check it out there. Now, one thing I wanted to hit today before we called it quits is the U.S. News list of top cities to live in. Now, this is a 100-city list. I am not going to read off all 100 for you. If you'd like to check it out for yourself, of course, feel free to go over to the Rebel Broker and check out the show notes for today's show. But I thought I'd give you the top 20. Some of these are going to sound very, very familiar compared to yesterday's show. Even more, some of these should ring bells with lots of previous shows. We can stay focused on the cities we talked about yesterday, though. And just as a quick reminder, what we talked about was the 5 housing markets that are on the verge of a tech boom. So there's a company out there that tracks hiring for the kinds of positions that tend to indicate there's growth in the tech sector in a city. And we shared those communities and we talked a little bit about the details relating to average price, rents, those types of things. Did a little drilling down, which is something we tend to do on this show. Those cities are, in order from number 5 to number 1, Philadelphia, Denver, Boston, Houston, and Chicago, just to remind you so you can kind of see where these things might fall. Now, we're going to go ahead and rattle off the top 20, and then maybe if we have time, we'll go into a little bit more detail on the top couple. Number 20 on our list, Houston, Texas, which came in at number 2 yesterday on our tech growth places. According to this, let's see what kind of sexy details they give us here. The Houston metro area attracts people with an entrepreneurial spirit and those who want to work at some of the country's largest companies. Not only is Houston the hub of the oil and gas industries, but it's also a major center of manufacturing and healthcare. The region has weathered the economic downturn better than similarly sized metro areas in terms of bouncing back from lost jobs. As the country recouped, Houston was able to gain all of its lost jobs back and has gone on to add 2 jobs for everyone lost. So that's good news. What's interesting about Houston is I have some family that lives in Houston, some extended family. And despite the fact, remember when the energy sector kind of took a dump, right? Last year, year before, we were talking about Houston and some of the great opportunities. I even had a commenter over on YouTube who was talking about an acquisition he made in Houston that's worked out great for him. So it kind of had this double whammy of the overall economic downturn plus the energy sector kind of going out on it. And I think this could represent a pretty good opportunity for folks who are looking for investment opportunities. And of course, we also went over that yesterday in terms of covering some of the basic info on the markets that exist there. All right, let's go ahead and continue down this list. I'm going too slow. Number 19, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Grand Rapids, if I'm not mistaken, has been on several of our other lists. Madison, Wisconsin, number 18 in best places to live. It sounds familiar, but I can't recall what list that might have been on. Minneapolis, St. Paul came in at number 17. This one's interesting because of how low it is on the list. San Francisco, California came in at number 16. And number 15 is another one that surprises me more by how low it is on the list, but than anything else. This is another one that's been on tons of lists, whether you want to talk about return on investment or other different opportunities relating to investing. Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, the Dallas Metroplex area, I think tends to be an area with a lot of good opportunities. Here's another one that's come up on a couple of lists. I know that there's some tech stuff going on here. This is number 14, Charlotte, North Carolina. Next on our list, another one that sounds familiar. I'm sure we've talked about Nashville, Tennessee, coming in at number 13 on best places to live. Number 12 on our list is Boise, Idaho. Number 11, another one we've talked about. This whole stretch from Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is coming in at number 11, all the way up to Denver has been pretty hot. And remember, Denver is on our list at number 4 of cities that are showing a shining tech future for folks. Number 10 on our list, Salt Lake City, Utah. Number 9, Des Moines, Iowa. Number 8, Boston, Massachusetts. And remember, Boston was on our list of cities with a strong indication of robust tech jobs coming down the line, which would indicate more job growth in 2017, which would then indicate more demand for housing. Number 7, Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. Number 6, Seattle, Washington. This one's been on a ton of our lists. I've given some ground truth of Seattle. I was up there taking one of my sons to a college he was interested in, and talked a little bit about how you can look at something all you want from a distance from your desk, but once you get there and drive around, some truths just become very, very clear in terms of what you want to be aware of. And Seattle was one of those examples where getting into Seattle from some of these other areas where you have to cross a bridge, the commute is ridiculous. So clearly there's a strong commute element to places like Seattle, where if you're an investor, you need to really understand who your customer is for that, and who that tenant is that's going to want to rent your home. Because if they have to go to work in downtown Seattle, odds are that's not going to be the first place they're going to be looking. So you need to understand that dynamic, I think, in markets like that. Number 5 on our list, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I don't think Fayetteville, Arkansas has been on any of our lists, which just for that reason alone makes it interesting to potentially take a look at, particularly since it comes in the top 5 of this list of best places to live. Number 4 in best places, Washington, D.C. Not sure why that is. It's one of those ones where we've seen an awful lot of growth in terms of equity in homes, all those types of things. Might be worth a look if it's something that interests you. I would probably be drawn more towards suburbs, areas outside of Washington, D.C. as an investment, but that's just me. San Jose, California comes in at number 3 in terms of best places to live. And again, we've talked about San Jose, California in terms of prices and how difficult it is. I help people buy homes in San Jose fairly frequently. I tend to prefer to focus down here, but I always end up getting pulled back up there for whatever reason. But I frequently will sell and buy homes in San Jose for my clients. Number 2 on our list, which is also on our tech growth list, is Denver, Colorado. I think Denver presents a lot of interesting opportunities. We talked about the greater Denver area, but also it's one of those markets where there seems to be a pretty big challenge relating to purchasing a home. Still very competitive. Prices are still going crazy. But what's really interesting is that the apartment rental marketplace is a lot softer than you might expect. A lot of incentives, first month's free, that type of thing, which indicates there's maybe a bit more of a focus on the part of those renting to get into a single family residential renter, which may work great for someone like you who might be looking to invest there. And here we arrive at number 1 on the best places to live list. This one shouldn't be a horrible surprise. We've talked about this city a lot. It was our number 1 pick 2.5 years ago in terms of investments. We had sort of compiled a bunch of different lists from a bunch of different sources, and there was one that we use regularly that indicated Austin, Texas was going to see some of the greatest increases in property values over the next year. Sure enough, Austin, Texas delivered, and now it's the number one place to live in America, according to the folks over at U.S. News. Now, just to take a quick moment, I'm not going to cover all of these ones in the top. We already talked about Denver yesterday. If you want to get a quick review of some of the Denver numbers, you can check out yesterday's show. We did talk about that. I don't think I really want to go into the San Jose numbers. If someone's interested in San Jose, I'm happy to do that, but the prices there are still ridiculous. But let's go ahead and take a quick look at Austin. It's been a while since I've run numbers on Austin. I have been keeping track of things going on in Round Rock, which is just north of Austin. But let's go ahead and see what Trulia tells us is happening in the market in Austin. Now, I'm a big fan of Austin. I've been there quite a few times. I've looked for properties there over the years. There was a period of time where I actually thought I was going to move there. Back in 1998, 1999, it was a done deal. We had actually found a home to make an offer on. We were going to move out there. I was working on getting my real estate license in Texas to facilitate it. Plans changed, and we ended up not doing it. But that's sort of an indicator of how attractive I've always thought Austin was in terms of its location. Unlike a lot of other parts of Texas, it doesn't tend to be as hot. It has Lake Travis to the west, so that was where we were focusing our shopping, was in that area, just to keep things a little bit cooler. I've been in Austin at different times of the year, and the weather just seems more manageable than in places like Houston or San Antonio, where you feel like you're going to sweat to death in those places. So I think folks who transplant to Austin tend to have a higher probability of staying there. I've had an awful lot of clients who have moved away from California and moved to different places in Texas and moved back to California because it was just too hot. That happened a whole lot less with folks who moved to Austin. So there's definitely some staying power in terms of the attraction of Austin. Right now, according to the folks at Trulia, the average list price is $558,535. Now, remember, Texas is a state that does not allow the public sharing of sales data. If you've been a longtime listener to this show, you know I operated incorrectly on the theory that simply meant that it wasn't disclosed at all. But the real estate agents in that area, through their multiple listing service system, do have access to that sales data. It's just not something that's allowed that you can share publicly. There's apparently quite a few rules about it. There's a link you can check out for the Texas Association of Realtors that gives you the details on that if you're interested in going and looking it up. But the point is I was trying to give you strategies to work around that fact in terms of how you would pick your real estate professional, and you don't need to do that. You can pick anyone in the Austin marketplace, whether it's a big office or a small office, and they're all going to have access to the sales data, so you can make a more intelligent assessment on what offers you should make. Because in a market like this, as an investor, when I look at these numbers, I want to try to get a feel for the market. Are people tending to get their asking price? Are they tending to get under their asking price? Are they tending to get over their asking price? This is how you calibrate yourself. And if you can't have that data, it's very difficult to make good decisions in terms of how aggressive your offer should be. All right. So in checking out Austin, we can see those numbers. The median rent per month is $1,895. Keep in mind that is a rental amount that's based on apartments. So almost always those numbers are going to be less than what you would get for a single family residential. But if we take a look at this and we look at Austin homes for sale, I usually always start looking at the downtown areas just because those tend to be the areas that you're going to get consistent rentals. Usually not going to have to worry about it sitting on the market for months in a downturn. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and zoom in. But also in downtowns, I also like to consider looking at condos for those because those tend to be some of the more attractive ones in some of the really packed downtown areas. All right, so we've got a variety of options here. I'm looking through just north of downtown at Central Austin. I'm seeing a 1-bed, 1-bath for $145. It's right near Hyde Park. I'm seeing $5 million. Well, I don't think I'll be buying that one. $340,000 for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, just to the east end of downtown Austin, on the southern side of the river. $110,000 for a 2-bed, two bath. Now, what I suggest whenever you get calibrated like that and you're sort of separating the city into different zones relating to price or areas that represent a good opportunity for you, the next thing you're going to want to do is try to figure out what the crime scenario is. That's what I do. If you're someone who has a strategy to manage properties that are in higher risk neighborhoods, that's fine. Me personally, I like to at least be aware of that before I start looking. But the next thing I like to do after this is switching over to homes for rent in the area. I'd love to be able to overlap these two maps, but you can't. So I just look at them side by side to get a better idea of what things rent for. I like to zoom in exactly the same on the two maps, and then I can just go back and forth. So if we take a look at the home that is currently listed for $110,000, for instance, I'm seeing a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for rent for $2,400 just down the street. This is a 2-bed, 2-bath. I'm seeing $2,000 for a 2-bed, 2-bath for rent in the exact same area. Right off the bat, that indicates to me that we could clearly be positive cash flow on a property like that. But I'm also seeing in some of these areas where I saw higher prices, rents of $4,500, $5,400. So there's clearly a rental base here: $4,500, $7,500, $7,500, $6,600, $2,300 for a 2-bed, 2-bath in, what is that area? That's kind of a sexy number. In what's called Cherrywood, $2,400, $2,800 for a 4-bedroom, 2 full bath. So lots of opportunities here. I think there's still some stuff there, even within downtown Austin. And of course, if you then start expanding your gaze, as I did, and find folks like Round Rock or places like Round Rock that are just north of there, I think there's still some amazing opportunities there. And in my case, what I would be looking for is properties that, again, are in nicer areas where it's easier to maintain the property. You don't have to worry about graffiti or any other kind of stuff, but that has great access to commuting options for folks who are going to have to drive into Austin in order to get to work, because those are the folks those kinds of folks are likely to be who are living in Round Rock, who are living there and commuting. All right, folks, I hope that has been some valuable information for you. It's always my goal to leave more value on the table than the time you spent listening to the show, and I hope tonight that I've delivered on that. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to y'all next time.